Parshas Vayera. Not quite Shabbat Shalom, but almost. In Parshas Vayera 5781, in a nutshell, we see 3,823-year-old Rachel Imenu having a baby boy and then going out and voting for Joe Biden. That's the nutshell. What I want to talk about is what everybody talks about, I guess, on this parsha between the beginning Vayera and the Akedah. I want to dispense with a couple of quick thoughts on the Akedah. And most of what I'll be saying will be from Znaim LaTorah, Rav Nevin Solon, of course, from Matis Weinberg. The Znaim LaTorah, like many, talk about the Akedah, unfathomable. God telling Avram Avinu, father, go kill your son. It's unfair. It's unbelievable. It's astounding. And seems to come out of nowhere, totally capricious. And if you notice, that's what a lot of Jews talk about their religion, just the same way. It's unfair. I'm not comfortable with it. It's capricious. Here's another command of God that I don't really understand. And those Zion Torah, being a Haredi, a different Haredi, but living in Telstone, wishing that he, as a Holocaust survivor, had a tzahal in World War II, and he writes that. But Rav Sorotskin writes that yes, we're supposed to listen to the command of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even if it seems capricious, unfair, unbelievable. I'm not comfortable with it. That's one lesson. My lesson is simply that one Jew does not sacrifice another Jew, no matter what he thinks is his impetus. And that would have, I believe, have changed the behavior of many Jews during World War II. I think that's an important lesson to learn that wasn't learned. And it repeats over and over again, including Gush Katif Gerush. Okay, that's what I want a couple of nukudot on the Akedah. Avram Avinu. Rav Nevin starts out, Vayhi ben Asam Mikedem, at the end of Noach. Everybody's leaving the site where the Teva landed, which was Hararat. It's to the east, Ben Asam. Everybody's traveling, Mikedem, trying to apparently get back to Gan Eden, which is located somewhere in Eretz Yisrael. The whole world's population is stopped. And who are they stopped by? Nimrod. Now, this is Ramatis Weinberg's take on that whole Nimrod situation. Here he's got a just bubbling, emerging world population, and he just sees chaos, and he wants order. He wants Dvarim Achadim, communism, everybody thinks alike, dresses alike, same buildings. I was in Moscow in 1981. Leningrad was not that way. And the further you went away from the center of control, which was Nimrod certainly, and in Russia, the Communist Party in Moscow, further you went away, Tashkent, Bukhara, Samarkand, not that way, but Moscow was kilometer after kilometer, block after block of rectangular buildings, drab, gray. And that's what tends to happen in a communistic society. There's no creativity. There's Dvarim Achadim. And nobody gives a darn about a person. He dies. Well, we'll just shove him into the place of a brick in our tower. The great tower for the greater good of the proletariat. So Nimrod stops everybody. Nimrod has a Dvarim Achadim, and so he sets up idolatry to keep the people busy. Terach is his man who sells the idols, and there's the iconoclast Avram Avinu. He breaks all the idols. What's wrong with idols? Rambam in Hilchos Avodah Zarah calls it hata'ut hagdola, the big mistake. People were not able to think. If you think that the world is sitting on Atlas's shoulders, you have no reason to go doing astronomy, figuring out gravity, figuring out the Earth's rotation, being a Galileo, and all the subsequent astronomers, physicists, cosmologists that worked on trying to recognize reality as opposed to a projection from their own mind, which is the idol or the idolatrous thinking, which, by the way, even today, idolatrous societies do not produce science. The Greeks were not even capable of producing science. They produce projections of their own thought, which Aristotle throttled all scientific advancement for over 1,000 years. So Avram Avinu shows up and all he does is breaks idols. He recognizes, he takes a look at the creation, and from the creation realizes there had to be a creator, goes back to the primal Sovev, the one who's the primal cause of everything. And that's his Avram Avinu's greatness and Avram Avinu's, in a way, weakness. We kind of think of him as just another Jew, but he wasn't another Jew. In fact, he could never have contemplated Judaism like we have. For example, Karbanos in the Beis Hamikdash, or even maybe Tefillah. Look, he never built a Mizbeach. He builds a Matzeva, L'Hashem Anirai Love. Hashem appeared to me. Okay, here's a road marker. But when Reb Shimshon Rav Hirsch explains what the Matzeva was, road marker. This is where a nace happened to me and God talked to me. But a pulchan, a service, a religious service, that's not a Rav Avinu. He breaks those idols. You think you have a service? It's another projection of your own mind, and he would break that. He would never recognize, again, Karbanos in the Beis Hamikdash, not for him. Maybe even Tfilos, the way we set them down, not for him. And therefore, Bris Milah, in last week's Parsha, to the Isha Chesed, Olam Chesed Yibaneh, Hashem made the world in Chesed. I take the world as it is, and I love it, and I'll do everything to further it. But don't start giving me religious procedures. I broke those in my youth. So that's the Avram Avinu that we came up to. It was a tremendous nisayon, therefore, to the Isha Chesed. And now we move to Vayera, Yira, seeing. And now we have a totally different Avram Avinu. He's no longer Lech Lecha, walking all over the place. Rambam explains he gathered crowds, he wrote books, he had hundreds of prakim in his Gemara Avodah Zarah. He was an expert on it. He was the breaker of all those idols. And he's now sitting in his Eshel, Vayita Eshel. And there's a marked difference in the man. Before he was good, the Rambam describes gathering crowds. Now the Eshel's open. And the difference is now 3 guys come up on this hot day, 3 days after the Bris Milah. And Avram suddenly becomes discriminatory. They're what they have Avodah Zarah, but if they show kavod, like Rashi says to each other, they're good enough guys to come into my Eshel. In other words, the chesed has limits. And that is the problem with chesed, unbridled chesed. And we saw that in last week's Parsha. Lot. He parad now, and he goes away, and he goes to Stone, which we're going to see here. And he in this week's Parsha, in the continuation of the Stone story, these very same angels, these 3, now it's, I think, down to 2, is it? One had already given the, finished his mission, told Sarah that she's going to have the baby boy. the angels say, go up to the mountain. That's where Avram Avinu is. Lot says, no way. No way. Let me go to Zohar. I cannot go back to Avram Avinu. And that's the big hipared, the big separation of Ammon and Moab, which eventually need to be brought back into Am Yisrael in a way. Because Lot is the recipient of the ultimate socialist, communist welfare state. The big Abba, Avram Avinu gives him everything, and Lot can't take it. Therefore, I'm not going back to the mountain. I'll die there. I can't take that. He's the typical, it's not actually a rebellious teenager. It's rebellious, but he needs to. He needs to separate and become himself. And he doesn't come back till Ruth HaMoaviyah and Ammon and Naamah Ammonite, but they do have to come back for purposes of history and creating Mashiach in order to complete Am Yisrael. But the problem of unbridled chesed is going to be in this week's parsha solved by din, by discrimination. Din, fine setting of boundaries. Last week we saw Yishmael. No boundaries. Yado bakol. The man's hand is in everybody's pocket. He doesn't mind his own business. He's spreads out all over the place. North Africa, even Saudi Arabia isn't good enough, and North Africa isn't good enough. Now he wants Europe and the whole world. But that's Yado bakol. Unbridled chesed, unbridled to the point that he's a paradam. He's a wild man. You see it in the way he does bris milah. Instead of a kid being imprinted shortly after birth, like we do at 8 days, he makes a big show of a gever at age 13 and the paradam, and that's the way he approaches everything. Okay, so three men show up at Avram Avinu. Question is, Avram Avinu, we're taking this. All shul rabbis talk about it. Bikor cholim and achnasas orchim. But the question is, why, out of all the maseh chesed that Avram obviously did over his whole life, why pick on achnasas orchim right here at the beginning of the parsha to show the isha chesed? Yes, he's discriminatory now, a little bit of din, and we'll talk about it in a second. But it's because the big changes come about in Avram Avinu. And it looks like the big lover cannot be the ultimate lover without din, without discrimination. I can't let you in my house if you don't show kavod to each other, Rashi says. So there's hagbalot on his chesed, and that's exactly the role of din mul chesed, of Yitzchak mul Avraham. Din sets boundaries. Din from the word die. Shamar lomo die. Gemara says the world was going, evolving, and big bangs and evolution, and biology is just throwing green trees and green grass and all the chayot all over everywhere. Die, enough. That's din. That's the first din, I guess. And now, we would think that seeing din, we would see total objective truth. Isn't that what din is? Yikova din at the har, right? Yikova din at the har means what we would say, total objectivity. And that's not what we see in this week's parsha at all. We see in this week's parsha is arguments, subjectivity. I laughed, she laughed, he laughed, who laughed? Sarah laughed, I laughed, did I laugh? Don't tell me I laughed. All kinds of stories and subjective spins. Obviously, that first story, it's all perceptions. Were they really people, men, wayfarers, idolatrous wayfarers? No, they were malachim. All appearances. And worse, Avram's only doing an appearance of chesed. He prepares all this food and runs around. Ratzav Raham. He gets the bakar. He gets the chama v'chalav from Sarah and Lucy. You go bake the cakes. It's all appearances. They don't eat. They're malachim. And it's all spin. Avram and Elimelech. Did I tell you she's my sister? He did tell his sister. Did I ever tell you she's not my wife? You heard what you wanted to hear. And besides, the guy comes into your country. The first thing you ask, is this woman your wife so I can grab her? I mean, you want some chama and nuga and some water to drink? No, it's this woman your wife. So, and it gets deeper, perceptions of reality and din. Hashofet kolor mishpat God. This will not go over big in the New York Times. Nobody's going to appreciate this as din and mishpat. This is just, you're going to whack everybody like you did in the Mabul, destroy everybody. Hey, there could be some decent guys here, right? That's the whole thing. It's not going to be perceived. And your and your publicity ratings are going to go way, way, way down. You won't win in the polls. So the again, the whole story back by Lot. Didn't Avram think Hashem could reach a more objective din and mishpat than he could? And Lot, the ridiculous argument, according to the Gemara, well, Tzohar, it's only 51 years old. These other 52 years old. Couldn't have done as much sins. So let's free him. Couldn't gotta figure that one out if that's not a ridiculous argument. And it actually appears as a joke. And the baby is born and he's named Mr. Joke. And that's exactly what's going on in this parsha from beginning to end. That, what would we see in the beginning? Bikar Cholim. Besides Achnasas Orchim, Bikar Cholim, right? Now again, it's, why couldn't God have just healed Avram, and what did he need to go through this whole Bikar Cholim? Hashem is teaching Avram a lesson. And the lesson is, you think you're doing chesed and you're not feeding anybody anything, but it's that you have to do the chesed. You have to do the maisa. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I take care of the totzaot. You don't think I couldn't have healed you? What do you have to do Bikar Cholim? I'm teaching you, you go do Bikar Cholim. That's your act. Or if you're a doctor, you do the trufa. It's important to you. The chesed, look at Ruth. HaChesed asher asiti, ha'ish asher asiti imo chesed. The important thing is doing the chesed, and her is even different, greater issue, but she's doing chesed the Boaz. But the point is, you do the chesed, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, take care of the totzaot, the results. And again, it's that you have to do, and the same thing by Brit Milah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu did up to a point. Gave man, Avram and every man an orla. You have to complete, continue, finish off the bria. That's your role. You're the doer. But the connection between the beginning of the parsha and the end of the parsha is very tied into din. Why? What's health? What's life? It's a given in life. It's granted. And we're seeing at the beginning of the parsha, the whole issue of health, granted and taken away. And all of a sudden, when it's taken away, I hurt. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, make me feel better, right? When things are working well, and the body's working well, and the guy can breathe fine, he doesn't get chest pain if he walks upstairs, nature works just fine. But when it doesn't work, all of a sudden, there's the presence of Shekhinah. Where do we see HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Where do we see the divine? Only in the details when it doesn't work, when nature doesn't work. Health, one of the life's givens. Life itself. a given that we can't ponder at all. We don't know why somebody gets sick really, and we don't know why somebody lives. The whole argument hill over Shammai. At the end, that given, the Anshe Din, now Avram and Yitzchak, and especially Yitzchak, God, your givens, they're all just a joke. They're not the important things here. You gave me it, you take it back. I have no problems with that. You give me a hard time over what I've done with it, then you'll get an argument. And we see that in the Gemara. Din and his givens are really a joke. I mean, it's almost like Lot and his Tzohar, but with a Yiddish bent. Latid Lavo, this is Shabbos Peitet Omud Bet. Yom Elo HaKadosh Baruch Hu Avram B'necha Chatuli. So Hashem says, the Jews have sinned. Well, they sinned. What happens? You do a sin, you should get wiped out. Amar. Eimer Leili Yaakov. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, let me go talk to Yaakov about this one. It doesn't sound like such a great idea, Avram. Yaakov had pain in raising kids, so feel sympathy, right? So Hakadosh Baruch Hu turns to Yaakov Avinu, B'necha Chatuli. Now this is an amazing story. Is it a joke? Latid Lavo. Already we've got the whole conversation. Amar Lefana, Vibana Shalom, Yimach HaKadosh Shemecha. He gets the same answer. Al Kedusha Shemecha. Wipe him out. For Kiddush Hashem purposes, the Jews messed up. You do a sin, poof, you're gone. Amar Le. Lo B'savi Taimon. Old men, that's Avram Avinu. They don't have any reasoning. V'lo B'dar Ki Eitza. They have no understanding and counsel you're not going to get any good aces out of Yaakov Avinu. Amar lo liYitzchak. The Kadosh Baruch Hu now turns to Yitzchak, B'necha Chatuli. You say, your kids sin to me. Well, you would expect some grand philosophical polemic on the order of Moshe Rabbeinu on Har Sinai. If you touch them, blah, blah, blah. Oh no. Mr. Joke. Amar lefana Ribbono Shel Olam banai v'lo banecha. Aren't they your kids? They're not my kids. They're my kids only, not your kids. B'shoshik dim levanecha nasav v'nishma karata lahem b'ni b'chori. You called them on Sinai, my eldest. Achshav. Banai v'lo banecha. They're my kids. They're your kids. Okay. Bod kama chatu. Bemet. How much could they really sin? Kama shnotav shel adam. Shivim shana. Each one of them sins for 70 years. Dal esrim delo anashte elayo. Take out 20 years that al pidin you cannot certainly get misa before age 20 for anything you did. Pashulu chamishin misa b'dei shamayim. Pashulu chamishim. So now you've got left 50 years to sin. Dal kafei to leilasa. Figure 12 hours at night, they're not going to be sinning. Part of that is sleeping. Okay. Pashule kafei. Now they got 25 years to sin. Dal tarti sri upalga. Take away half of that. Titzlui umechel udebesakise. They daven, they eat, and they go to the washroom. Sort of, again, three kind of weird examples of what they're up to for half their day. But, okay, God. Pasule tartisari. 12 upalga. 12 and a half years are left. Kulam mutav. If you're going to handle all those sins, just give them forgiveness, wipe out the sins, fine. Vimlav. Palgalai bagalecha. Okay, you take 6 1/4, I'll take 6 1/4, half and half. Vintim salam kulam alai. You wanted me to take the whole bit? Hakrivas nafshi kamecha. I sacrificed myself for you. What does it mean I sacrificed myself for you? He died on the Mizbeach. All of a sudden, a human being I can't justify it. God, you gave it to me. All I can do is do things in it. But I have no entitlement to it. I have no obligation on you. You have no obligations to me because you gave it to me. It's your given. You can take it, and it's just a big joke. And like all the other givens in life, patchu v'yomer ata avinu, and the Jews at that time, patchu, they said, they will say, but that's the story. You're our true father. Amalem Yitzchak, Acha Temakasim Li, Kasula Kadosh Baruch Hu. Umachvi leho Yitzchak Kadosh Baruch Hu Beinayo. Miad Nasu Neim Lamarom Viomim, they turned their eyes upwards to God and said, Acha Shema Vinu Goalenu Me'alam Shemecha. A joke. A joke. You make a Yiddish joke, a Jackie Mason type story. You know, one of the Noach stories is related by many comedians. What are you doing, God? Or this one? You're telling me to do what with this with the Yitzchak? It's a joke because the givens are a joke, and it's kind of necessary right here to talk a little bit about din. This business of forming borders, as opposed to unbridled chesed, outward. The outward Avram Avinu, the introverted din gvura Yitzchak type, who doesn't do all that much in the world. He does have some relations with the Avimelechs, as we'll see. But din gvura, judges, when they judge, each one, we have 70 we have 3 courts of 3, courts of 23, courts of 70, because each and every one of those derechs, their ways of thinking is now important. And that's what Avram Avinu sees with his Eshal. Achnasas Orchim, bringing in the road. The tent was open to all roads. All roads ended up at the Eshal, right? He wanted all the roads, all the opinions of all the people. It wasn't anymore just convincing people with lectures like Lech Lecha. It was now, I want to hear what you have to say, and let's talk, and let's hear your individual perspective. And that makes for din. The judges, if it's 70 unanimous in one way, you throw the case out. We need the different perspectives, the yiras, the different spins. It's not totally, our din is never objective. It has to be the way we see it and then put it together. That's our achnas orchim. That's the din. The din is the way you see it. And thus, it's the relationship between those 70 judges, the relationship between Avram and his orchim. It's the yachas, which is what Bris Milah is. Bris Milah is the yachas between us and Kadosh Baruch Hu. He takes biology so far and we improve on it. But it's the yachas, the interrelationship between us. And therefore, din with its fine discriminations, it's very close to laughter. It's very close to a judgment call, and yachas, like I said. Therefore, yachasim vatitzchak Yitzchak et Rivka ishto. Again, yachas and joke, but it's also Yitzchak is also Yitzchak several times. Play, because he goes to Yitzchak means play. Yitzchak and play. That's what this is. His whole commentary with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a play. It's a joke, right? But he's making din. But when he classically in the end of Chayesor will go out into the field, lasuach basadah. What's he do? That field is his field of activity, his playing field. He's now magbil, the whole olam that's Avram's world. God Avram connected to a Ribbon Shalom who created a whole Bria. He connected to an ever expanding Big Bang Bria. That's Avram Avinu. Yitzchak constricted it. This is my playing field. This is the way I do things in Din, my playing field, the way I see Din. And it's related to Mitzachek, it's play, but serious play. I want to read, because I can't do it any better than Rav Matzes Weinberg can do it. I want to read his finish up to Parshas Vayera, because I think we'll finish with this. And one last episode of laughter is Avram's laughter, Sarah's laughter. I did laugh, I didn't laugh. But why is Hashem get, ticked off at Sarah? You laughed. Because her laugh was, can I, these breasts, the Gemara says, they're all dried out. Can I nurse a baby? Can I have a baby? She's talking about herself. She's only worried about herself. Avram Avinu, a ben mei ashana. He's thinking of universals, not himself. And that's the difference between the two. The universality is what makes all the difference in the world. And here, Rav Matzes Weinberg. Laughter can be mocking, doubting, cynically expressive of the pain of absurdity. Laughter can be noble, lifting one beyond pettiness to see a whole picture from a new perspective. The Re'iyah which turns man into a Yareh in the end. The former is crushing and bitter, mocking laughter, but the latter is exuberant and free. The man who has learned such aware laughter lives in an exquisite balance, the balance of Din, which is what we see on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, the balance of Din. In his moments of his greatest honor, he knows that he is but a step away from foolish embarrassment, from sort of slipping on a banana peel. But in his moments of greatest shame, he knows that nothing can touch the significance that is his. This was the laughter of Avram as opposed to Sarah's. It was the kind of laughter that bridges paradox and mysteries, the mystery of life, the mystery of health, the mystery of all these givens, which we really don't understand, but which Yitzchak, Mr. Din, Mr. Joke, approaches with laughter, with that Gemara in Shabbos. Humor exists within the dawning surprise of perceiving that contradictions can be true, that antitheses need each other. Each dayan needs each other. Avram needs all his orchim coming into his tent. He needs all those roads. The roads come in. It's not just their ways. They're ways of thinking. Orchim. That is why even the simplest joke cannot be explained. One needs to see the harmony of paradox. See it. Vayera, seeing. To go beyond the abstract explanations. To gain a new perspective. Laughter is the balance, the sensitivity to the hairbreadth difference that lies between sobbing over our heartache and rejoicing in our madcap adventure of living, tears of joy mingling with tears of sadness. We move so easily from one to another. Our laughing becomes crying, our crying laughing. They are nearly identical physiologically and psychologically, emerging from the same inner wellspring. Humor spans the paradox of a life with infinite meaning. A meaning that comes only through the struggle of what we make of it. Now it's not the givens, it's what we, the Yitzchak in his field of activity, Lasuach Basadeh, the Mischak, the Misachek, Yitzchak, Yitzchak in Tehillim, where he's called that. The struggle of what we make of it. Humor spans a life that is both endlessly precious and hopelessly transient. We are creatures of eternity playing in the moment. In such laughter resides the uttermost transcendence of man, his deepest similarity to God. Avodah Zorah, Gemara, Daf Gimel Amud Bet. Hashem laughs with his creations, never at them. Vayera opens with the very same laughter achieved at its conclusions. For while the laughter at Yitzchak's birth is laughter at the surprise and wonder of a single impossible birth, It's Yitzchak himself laughs at the surprise and wonder of a singular, impossible birth, the birth of all creation, of the universe, of existence itself. In a certain sense, Avram laughs his way from the birth of Yitzchak all the way to the Akedah, as Vayera grows from the seeds planted at its inception. The laughter of Din gives us the perspective that creates opportunity, the vision to see that opportunity, and the freedom to use opportunity. Real life was invented for the two true children of he who laughs last and best. Vayigdal Yeled Vayigamal. The Gemara says the Holy One is going to make a party for the just of those Anshe Din on the day his chesed is weaned. For the children of Yitzchak, have a Shabbat Shalom and go out and vote many times.